Tema Talks is brought to you by the Tema Conter Memorial Trust, which is Canada's leading provider of peer support, family assistance, education and training for emergency services, public safety, military personnel, and their families. Check out tema.ca for more information. The views, opinions, and endorsements expressed in each podcast episode are those of the host and the guest alone, and do not necessarily reflect the official position of the Tema Conter Memorial Trust. The subject matter of this podcast may be triggering for some listeners. Please take the time to get yourself in a calm and positive mind space before listening so you can get the most out of the podcast. Okay, cue the music and enjoy this episode of Tema Talks.
Hello, people, and welcome to Tema Talks. How are you? I'm doing okay. June is PTSD Awareness Month, and I'm going to do my part. And my part is this. In June, I'm going to be putting out 8 podcasts. Every Monday and Thursday in June, there's going to be a new episode. So get well rested, free up lots of space on your phone. It's going to be a busy month, as it should be. I hope you enjoy it. A little bit of housekeeping to start off with. You may have been seeing recently a lot of posts from the Tema Conter Memorial Trust with a phone number to call. It says we're listening. You can call. It's 1-888-288-8036. I just want to clarify, that is an information line and a line that you can call in and request information. It is not manned 24/7. So in saying that, it is not a crisis line and should not be used as such. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact your local crisis center, family doctor, go to the nearest hospital, or call 911. Got it? Good. Perfect. Now, I'm going to have a little rant. Sometimes I like to do that. And my rant this episode is about something I'm going to call mental health support shaming. I've seen this happen before, and just happened recently. I'm not going to name any names. Those of you in the know will know what I'm talking about. We had a brave person come out and ask for help, and they did so through a social media post. Great. Lots of love and support was given. An initiative was started, and this wasn't initiated by the family, but a friend of the family. A funding page was set up to help cover some costs that may be incurred for this person trying to get help. Great. Another great thing. Perfect. The person looking for help received some negative comments, some scathing comments. One of them I saw. And in this comment, a reference was made to the fact that the person making the comment, went through, a person that was asking for help went through their social media and saw that they travel a lot, and they seem to be living a great life and really happy, and, in their words, were flaunting that good life, and made a judgment on this person that they should not be asking for help because they don't need it. That's wrong, people. We should not be doing that. That's major steps backward in this movement. Mental illness does not care about your status in life. Doesn't care how many followers you have on social media. Doesn't care about your race. Doesn't care about what patch of dirt you were born on. Doesn't care about your gender. Doesn't care how you identify. Doesn't care how good a job you have. It simply does not care. It does not discriminate. It can affect anybody, regardless of anything. So please, refrain from judging. As I say, more love, less judgment. We're really good. People who are struggling are really good at putting on a front that everything's okay. They'll tell you they're fine. They'll take happy selfies. They'll look great. Inside, they may not be. They could be falling apart. So don't judge people. If you cannot support or do not have anything supportive to say, just don't say anything. Okay? We need to not have these negative comments, because what happens is the person asking for help now feels bad for asking for it, which is exactly the opposite effect that we are trying to have. It's opposite of the message we are trying to send, that it is safe to ask for help. Anyway, don't judge people. Okay? I think you get it. I think you guys all understand that very well. But it needed to be said, and I said it, so we're done. Stay tuned at the end of this episode. I'll be telling you about a few events that are going on, maybe in your area. So if you want to hear about those, stay tuned. I don't know if you know where you were on April 19th, 1995. But I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember being glued to my television set, watching a mass casualty, traumatic incident unfold on a global stage, glued to my television. It was the Oklahoma City bombing. 168 people at least died that day, and more than 680 people were injured. My guest this episode is Oklahoma City firefighter Chris Fields. This event changed his life. You may remember an iconic photograph of a firefighter holding an infant that was pulled from the rubble that day. That was Chris. It was such an honor to talk to him. It was a very powerful conversation. Let's get to it.
It was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in.
Welcome to Tema Talks, Chris. It is an immense pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with y'all.
Well, thank you for joining us all the way from Oklahoma City, I presume.
Hey, yes, sir. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Excellent, Chris. If you don't mind, just to start off, I'd like to just learn some more about you. So can you just talk to us about, how you grew up, what your upbringing was like, and what led you to the fire service?
Yes, born and raised right here in Oklahoma. Grew up in southwestern part of Oklahoma City, and grew up in a Christian home. Mom always had me at church, and I grew up we had a program called Royal Ambassadors. It was like kind of like Boy Scouts, I guess, at the church, basically. Yeah. And one of my leaders of that group was a man named Benny Zellner. He was a Oklahoma City firefighter, so I kind of drew me towards it. My uncle was a firefighter, and then my best friend growing up was his dad was the preacher at our church, but he was also the chaplain of the Oklahoma City Fire Department.
Okay.
So I grew up running around with him, when, before we was old enough to drive and do our own run around. On the weekends, I'd stay with him. His dad would go visit the fire station. So I kind of grew up around it a little bit that way. And then the church I grew up at was, I bet there was probably 30 minimum of Oklahoma City firefighters that went to church there, because the pastor was a chaplain, of course. So I just kind of grew up around the environment a little bit, and always felt that's what I wanted to do, and was lucky enough to apply and get hired. So,
now, how old were you when you applied and got in there?
I got hired July 12th. My rookie school started July 12th in 1985, and I was 2 weeks shy of being 21 years old.
Wow. Now,
so I got an early start.
I read through your bio. You were involved with the fire service for 31 years with Oklahoma City.
31, yes, sir. 31 years, 7 months, and 16 days. As of March 1st, just last week, I had been retired 1 year.
Wow. Okay. And I know that you retired as a major. So for me, involved in the fire service here, our rankings go a little bit different. Can you just explain the ranking system inside the fire service there?
Sure. Now, of course, it's changed a little bit since I first came on, but it's it's, you start out as a, probie, rookie, new boy, whatever you want to call them, and then,
Right.
Go to firefighter. And then years ago, they negotiated a deal for guys to get, more education. They added these little steps in between. They weren't around when I was coming up, but after 3 years, you can become what they call a corporal. You're basically just a certified relief driver, but you have to go to an academy and get this education. So it goes on up to a driver, which is a sergeant's rank. And then in between, and then there's a captain and then a major. And a major is just an extension of captain. It's just a major has gone to a 2-week academy and furthered his education a little bit and has become a major. And basically you're a station officer. I was in charge of my fire station on my shift, and I also served as a ride-out, meaning if the district chief for that district that I was in, which was made up, Oklahoma City, there's 37 fire stations. We cover 620 square miles, Oklahoma City, a lot of rural and downtown stuff too. But so if the chief was off, I would also ride out as a chief.
Okay.
If he was off. But basically as a major, I was basically station officer in charge of my station on my shift. So the last station I was at when I retired, I was in charge of, there was 9 guys at my station.
Okay. And I also read you filled many positions while you were there. You were supervisor of special operations section and as well as in charge of the dispatchers. Talk about that a little bit.
That was matter of fact, it was, we'll get into it farther, when we talk about other issues, but it was a point in my career where I felt like for my sanity at that time, I needed to get off the rigs for a while. I was at a station that was just, nonstop, 24/7. We were gone. We were very seldom getting sleep. And I was just at a point to where I didn't want to not start liking my job. So I took a position that was open to where I was kind of in charge over a little bit of our human resources and our, Oklahoma City Fire Department. We do our own IT stuff. So I was kind of over the guys that did all of our computer stuff, and then I was over our dispatchers. I did that for a while, and then I moved into our special ops division, which was, I was in charge of the training, continuing ed and training for our USAR team, our underwater dive team, and our hazardous material team.
Okay, awesome. Now, before we talk a little bit about April 19th, 1995, of course, before that happened, what would you say were the support systems that were in place? I know this is really early in all these kind of issues, but were there support systems in place, and what would you say? How is your service doing in supporting those that may have some emotional or mental issues?
At no fault of Oklahoma City Fire Department, I would say it was non-existent.
Right.
Because it was just non-existent. That was just, as you've been around back in the day. It just wasn't something that was talked about.
You're right.
It was, we had an event in 1988, which I mentioned Benny Zellner, one of my mentors earlier. Right. Him and 2 other gentlemen, were killed in a house fire that I was on with, and one of the guys that also died was the guy I went to rookie school with. So, after that, they brought in like a critical I think they brought in like a team from like South Carolina, if I remember correctly. Because we had nothing in place.
Right.
At that time, the fire department chaplain position wasn't filled. It had kind of gone by the wayside at that time. And, so it was, they brought in people from South Carolina, which actually I think may have been all right because guys that did talk, I think they felt comfortable because these were people that we didn't know, that we wouldn't see again, that, which I think sometimes is different than talking to somebody that, somebody from your own department.
Yeah.
You don't, whether that trust factor's there or not, I don't know, but
right.
at that time, earlier, but yeah, at that time, and like I said, again, no fault of Oklahoma City, the fire department, it was just non-existent at that time.
As it was, across the board for almost every organization, I would say.
Right, exactly. You are correct.
So, for me, Chris, when I look back on my life, and of course, a lot of my life has been in the fire service as well. I got into it early at the end of high school, and early in my fire service, I remember very well. I was probably only a couple years in, and I remember being glued to the TV on April 19th, 1995 for the Oklahoma City bombing incident. And it was a polarizing event.
Yes.
Were you were you on duty when that happened?
Yes, sir. I had come on duty that Oklahoma City, we worked 24-hour shifts. And we had just started. We just come off our 4 days off. Oklahoma City, you work 24 on, 24 off. You do that 3 times in a row, and then you're off 4 days. So I had just came back from my 4 days off, reported for work that morning about, we have to be there at 7. I'm usually there no later than 6, drinking coffee. And so, yes, I had come on duty that morning.
So it was your first day shift. Now, do you take me through that from receiving the call, if you can remember that?
Yeah, we were just doing, of course, we have each duties we do around the station on whatever days you work, and Wednesday happened to be a yard day. So a lot of the guys were out mowing. I was one of 3 officers at the station that day. I had just been a captain. I hadn't been a captain. I'd probably been a captain a couple of years, but I was still one of the, lower ranking captains because I hadn't been one that long. So I was the 3rd officer at the station that day.
Okay.
And, we were all just kind of, the guys had come in from mowing and weed eating and do all that. We were kind of standing around the kitchen talking. And, we specifically remember, not just because the bomb detonated at 9:02, but we knew it was about 9 o'clock. We were talking about going to the grocery store and getting breakfast, getting it around. And we felt the station. We heard it. We felt it. The glass rattled at the station. The station I was at the time was just 17 blocks north of the Murrah building of the bombing.
Okay.
And so we felt it, and there was a train yard to the east of our station, and we thought maybe a train had derailed or, so we went out the east door of the station to look. Couldn't see anything, so we walked around to the south side of the station, looking back south towards downtown Oklahoma City, and saw the huge plume of smoke, and we didn't even wait to be dispatched. We self-dispatched. At that station, at that time, we had an engine, a rescue ladder, and the hazardous materials unit, and I was the officer on the hazardous materials unit that day. So all 3 rigs, we just ran to the rigs and self-dispatched ourselves. Knowing we'd be one of the first in companies because of where we saw the smoke and where we were located. So we went ahead and dispatched ourselves.
Right. Explain if you can, if you don't mind. Just describe what it was like rolling up to that scene.
It's one of them deals where on the way, of course, we're discussing, me and the driver just got, 1,000 things run through our mind. And there was a building across the street from the bombing that had some remodeling going on. And so, we were thinking, because they were doing adding some steel girders and stuff, we were thinking a welder's torch, maybe set it up. We were just going through our mind. And then we were still about 6 or 7 blocks away from 5th Street is where the Murrah building sat, on 5th Street.
Right.
We started seeing windows and stuff blown out of businesses along Broadway, a street we were traveling south on. And, we still had no earthly idea, of course, what we were going to roll up on, but we kind of ruled out anything like that. We're thinking there's no way a welder's torch and acetylene deal is going to set off, we're 6 blocks away and we've got windows blown out of businesses,
Wow. Okay.
So when we got to 5th Street, we turned back to the west and we parked our rig. And when we got off, one of the first things I think when I talked to guys, some of my buddies, we talked that night. One of the first things we remember is all these people just kind of running towards us, So we've seen some walking wounded. And we didn't have a real good view of the building because we were kind of the street kind of had a little hill. So we weren't at the top of the little hill where we couldn't actually see the actual base of the building, but we could still see all the debris and all the smoke. And, it was just, but like you said, it was like something we'd never seen before, nothing we were prepared for, all the chaos and the walking wounded and and then once we got closer, the actual debris that was still, I think I've told people, in fact, I can still remember not walking on glass and paper and whatever other debris for the longest time, where you're not even walking on pavement because there's so much debris on the ground.
Right. And we all remember, I remember it very well, and obviously the iconic photo of you holding that infant.
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine, the weight of that was so much more than that infant's weight.
Yes. It was a deal, we were probably not even an hour into the scene, probably 30, 45 minutes, and we'd helped the police department guys get a lady out of the basement, and we were going to the south side of the building to report we'd been called over there, and a police officer, and I didn't know he was a police officer at the time because he was in street clothes. He just he came around the corner and said he had a critical infant. He needed help. He had a critical infant.
Right.
And it's better these days, but 20-something years ago, police they weren't trained in any kind of first aid or medical,
Right.
So I my mom says there's a reason why it was me, and it was still. I just said, here, I'll take the baby, and he handed Bailey to me,
right.
and and of course the photo was. We didn't know anything about a photo until later that night, till 11:30 at night, and we can get into that in a little bit if you want to. But it was just looking back and seeing when the photo was taken and what I was doing. I know what was going through my mind was that because by that time we had saw the front of the building and saw the crater and saw the building and the condition it was in, and the only person I'd seen at that time we took out alive, she was alive, the lady we got out of the basement. So I'm sitting there holding Bailey, and I'm just thinking how real this is, and I remember it being quiet. I couldn't hear a thing. I was just looking at her thinking, wow, somebody's world is fixing to be turned upside down, and not realizing, even at that moment, not realizing that, there'd be 169, fatalities that day. But just thinking at that single moment about how, because I had a 2-year-old at home. My oldest one, who's 25 now, he was 2 at the time. So, so it really hits home, when I'm looking at her and thinking how somebody's world is just going to be destroyed. And I was standing there holding her, waiting. I had already checked for signs of life, and I didn't see any.
Yeah.
I had walked over to an ambulance, and the paramedic was there. And the reason I was standing there holding her, waiting, there's a larger photo of it where you can see him on the ground. He's getting a blanket out. The ambulance was already full. The stretchers were full, and like he said, we're not going to put that baby on the ground. Right. And he was getting a blanket out for me to put her on. So that's the moment, looking back now that I can see the photo, once I did, that's the moment they captured.
Yeah, and it's definitely a powerful moment. Now, Chris, how long were you on scene?
We self-dispatched at the time of the blast, and we were sent back to the station about between 10 and 11 o'clock that night. We were finally told, hey, y'all go back and take a break and get some rest.
So what, a 14-hour shift, 14-hour day or event?
Right, yeah.
Wow, okay. So you're traveling back to the station from that scene.
Mm-hmm.
What's the environment like inside that truck?
There was a lot of head scratching and a lot of it was really pretty quiet. It really didn't really start talking about it until we got back to the station. It was pretty quiet. Everybody had used the phone on the hazmat unit. We'd all called our respective spouses and checked in and let them know, hey, we're okay. And because there were so many, just like with any event, there were so many rumors, and stories going around about firefighters being hurt along with people. And so, it was just I think by that time the news had traveled that, that they were thinking it was, of course, we're all guilty of it. It was a Middle Eastern person, at that time. It's what we were told. So we were all, saying our piece and, and feeling
venting,
the anger.
You're venting off.
Yeah, right. And feeling the anger. And then, I remember specifically one firefighter saying, a guy named Mike Walker, that he said, I didn't see a live person all day long, or we didn't take out one live person.
Wow.
So that was just kind of the general talk of the day, and it was like I say, it was somber, and like I say, the that lady we got out first was we did remove one other lady who was talking to us when we got her out, but then we learned the next day when they started listing the dead that she was one of them. And we just remember because, just like any medical call, we were trying to get her name and her information so we could pass it along. We just specifically remembered her name and that she was pregnant, and she kept telling us that she was pregnant, and we learned the next day that she also passed away. So so like I say, it was just a somber, there was anger, there was, reflection, there was so it was a pretty long ride back to the station.
Oh, I bet. The longest ride.
Right.
And then, so you're back at the station. I assume you stayed probably at the station for a while. You're probably nowhere near ready to go home and to do that and to unpack all of that, I assume. When did people start sort of to talk, or did they start to talk, or was there any talk of some services, some support systems that were on the way for you guys, or no?
Yeah, now at the bombing, yeah, and just we weren't going to get off till 7:00 the next morning. Part of our, but
right.
we got back. I think we actually made a house fire like at 1:30 in the morning. So it was a pretty eventful day. But and I should back up, before we left the scene, we did go through a debriefing deal. We had developed, since we lost the firefighters in '88 and had some few other events. We had some pretty big floods here. And so we did at the time of the bombing, we had just started into having our own CISM team.
Okay.
It was, like I say, it was in the infancy stages. And it kind of cratered from the start because they didn't necessarily, which I think is wrong. They didn't force you to talk, but you felt like you were forced to say something or talk in this group.
Right.
And then it was found out that somebody from the CISM had told somebody what somebody had said that they experienced. And so it kind of went downhill from there as far as...
That happened a lot I think in the early stages of a lot of CISM, procedures.
Right.
I think that probably happened.
Right. And I don't think it was necessarily going, hey, so-and-so.
Right.
I think it was, some of it was in concern, but, just not learning that, it's okay maybe to tell a story that you heard, but you don't need to associate names.
Right.
Because there was still that stigma of, well, if you're struggling, it's okay to feel bad about it and have some emotions about it, but if you're struggling with it, you might be a little weak,
Yeah, that's right.
That was still the stigma back then,
That's right.
So it was kind of, they did. They tried, and they did have the options besides the CSN. They eventually, over the next 2 weeks, there was counselors down there, and then they did supply or make available any counseling if anybody needed it.
Okay, all right. And so now how are you? Like, how were you after that? Describe your life after.
Well, and here's the strange thing. My life afterwards was, and like I say, and a lot of this I can say now that I didn't learn until, I didn't start really struggling with emotions where it started affecting my personal life and all that until like 2005 or 2006.
Really? Okay.
10 years after. But when I learned that what I was going through, I can look back 2 years after, 3 years after, and see little things,
right,
that now I would know to catch, or now I can tell people to look out for, when then I'm just thinking then, bad day, bad week, not really putting it together. It was other things, accumulating on me. And one of the things I did struggle with, but I just learned, and to back up.
Yeah.
I felt like I had to carry my persona that I had always had. I was always this happy-go-lucky guy, always the guy with the funny line or the joke, and felt like I had to keep I was the one that kept everybody else's, spirits up. And
yeah. And you had this superhero iconic picture of you.
Right.
On
so I
every
didn't
television.
Right. And me and Erin had become friends. That was set up. Erin is Bailey's mom, the baby that I was holding. A reporter got us together, and it kind of ignited a friendship. Our families are still friends today. And, and it was one of those deals to where, if you make calls throughout the day, you go back to station, you have emotions about it, you think about it, but you never, 9 out of 10 times, you never hear from the people again. You don't see them again unless you run on them again. You don't see their family at the hospital because you're off the we didn't transport, or whatever.
Right.
Well, this was a deal to where we saw these people's faces every day in the media, because the story was so big.
That's right.
And then once I met Erin, it's a great thing, but I think I felt one of the things I struggled with the most, which I had to learn I had no control over, but was the guilt. I carried a huge amount of guilt being the last one to hold her baby. That was something no parent, number one, should have to hold their baby like that. But
right.
For me to be the last one to hold her baby was something I really, really struggled with. And it's weird to talk about now, because even like when I try to tell my story, it's like I have to jump ahead to say, I didn't know I was struggling with this until I reached I reached a certain point to where I started learning all this stuff. And
that's right. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I struggled with. And what I found dealing with, once I was diagnosed with PTSD and dealing with it, was it's not a single event. I mean, a single event can maybe be the one that pushes you over the edge.
Right.
But my PTSD was not solely related to that bombing, that photo. It's we were going back on years, the fire alarm I was on, we lost the 3 firefighters, stuff that occurred in my childhood. I mean, it was just crazy, the accumulation of life that if you don't know what to look out for and how to deal with it, it'll just sneak up on you. And that's what happened to me.
So what happened in the early 2000s? What did you start noticing that might have led you to believe that, wait a minute, like something might be going on here?
Well, I started, it was more like a depression. It was more like I became I say more recluse, not to the fact that I wasn't social, I didn't talk, but I wasn't that same personality, and my wife had noticed. And, I'd always coach my boys in Little League growing up, and kind of stuff came, if I could get off for a game, I would get off. I used to pay people. I would pay bucks to get off, so I never missed some of my son's activities.
Right.
Well, now I'm like, I can't get off. It was just like it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. Things just like that I look back going, golly, it was, because that's not me,
Yeah.
I just thought it was a phase I was going through, or midlife crisis, and I say this jokingly. Now, I think when guys feel that way, they all go for I must be low on testosterone. I must be, 'cause that's the big thing now, low T.
Yeah.
That's why you're depressed. That's why you have no energy. That's why you have, I was feeling all those things, but it was the PTSD. And I had one of the triggers that really got me one time was we were, where we live now, we were putting in a pool, and they had busted out some concrete, and it started raining. And the smell of that wet concrete dust, because it had rained the day of the bombing, it rained that afternoon. And it didn't send me into any kind of, traumatic breakdown, but it was a trigger. It was, which then, of course, I can say trigger now because I know what it is. Then I didn't know it was a trigger. I just thought, God, it smells like the bombing, and went on about my business.
Right.
Not knowing it's the things it's doing to my mind and my spirit the whole time.
Yeah. So obviously that starts to deteriorate a little bit, and you start to become more aware, and then you get diagnosed with PTSD when?
About 2000 and probably 2007 or 8.
Right.
Before and of course, by that time I was out of the house. Me and my wife were separated. We're back together now. Everything's great.
Yeah.
But, we were separated. I was living on my own. I was not being near the father or the husband I needed to be to my wife, my 2 sons. Things were just, and what was so sad was when I first was diagnosed with PTSD, that was my ace in the hole. Now I had a reason, and that, now I use that as the reason I was acting like instead of manning up and getting help for it, I just continued what I was doing and writing it off as, I got an excuse. Look at me. I got PTSD. When PTSD was, all those decisions I was making were conscious decisions to, to do wrong. But of course, it's just hard to relate, that state of mind. But like I say, I just, I was so bright that I used that as an excuse to keep, to keep living like I was living.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's how brilliant I am.
So what happened that made you realize enough's enough, that it's time to get help?
I had a friend, because me and my wife were battling, going back and forth. I had filed for divorce. We didn't go through with it, but I had filed for divorce, and I knew that's what I didn't want, but I felt like I felt like it was the next step in my progression, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I had done all this stuff. And of course I'm dealing with, I can't even look at the face I'm seeing in the mirror anymore. To the things I've done to my family and embarrassed my family and humiliated my wife and just on and on. I thought, well, this is the next step. You file for divorce, and you get out of her life so she can start a new one. And I never did back up. I never did I had those thoughts sometimes where, well, if something happens, they'd be better off without me. But I never contemplated, me being the one to end my life. I never had the suicidal thoughts.
No. Okay.
But I just got to a point where I felt that was the next step was, file for divorce. Well, I had a guy, a mentor guy kind of just basically grabbed me by the head one time and said, look at me. He goes, if you love your wife and you want to make it work, you go tell her, you quit making excuses. He said, if you want to keep doing this, and he basically said, how can you help other people and be a hero to other people, which, we use that word loosely. People say you're heroes. We say we're just doing our job.
Right.
So basically what he says, how can you be a hero to anybody or help anybody, however you want to phrase it, if you can't even help yourself and help your family?
Yeah, good point.
So it was just kind of the way he told me. He said, be a hero to yourself and to your family first, and then take care of everybody else. And that just kind of, I don't know, I just thought, that would be an amazing turnaround if I could pull it off. And went and got some counseling and went away to a place in California for a week or so to a post-traumatic, West Coast post-traumatic retreat place, and got the help I needed and learned how to deal with it and accepted, it's kind of like anything in life. There's some things I can control and some I can't. And the ones I can control, I'm going to control, and the other ones I can't, I'm not going to let them control me.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So how would you, obviously you got diagnosed, you finally went and got help. Mm-hmm. How would you say you're doing now?
I would say, since everything, me and my wife have been back together since 2011, about 11.
Okay.
And not to take away from anything else in our past, but our last 7 years together have been, and with my family, have been probably more rewarding and everything than the previous, 20 before that. It's, and I think it's just, I don't know, I guess I can just look back and see where we were.
Yeah.
There's sometimes me and my wife, something will happen, she'll say, back when we weren't together, if we're talking about a certain story.
Yeah.
But it's always refreshing when we get done just to look back and see where we are now and think, wow. So it's just, I know I'll never be there again because I won't allow it. I know how to deal with it. So like I say, I'm just, I'm at a point now to where, I'm doing this kind of stuff. I want to start keeping people from having to experience what I did, or at least be able to know that they're heading in that direction. Not everybody's going, it's a small percentage that are diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't mean they're not going to have the emotions and the feelings, on,
that's right,
on certain things. So.
Yeah, we need you, Chris. We need you telling your story. Like, welcome to the community, because you're vital to this, and so you seem to be doing well. Now, you just recently left the fire service. So before you left, how would you rate the fire service as far as how have they grown in the support of its members with mental issues, whether it be PTSD or any other of the issues?
Well, I'll put it this way. I'll sum it up with saying I've seen an amazing change. I've seen, even at my station, when we would make calls, and come back to the station and be able to, we wouldn't dwell on it, but we could talk about it. Nobody was shy about, if something bothered them or if something upset them. And, I got to, when I retired, I was in a position where if we were on first aid calls, the other guys, when they're doing the first aid, I'm standing there with the family members getting information or whatever,
Right.
And I told them sometimes that's just as hard. You're standing there with a lady that's been married to this gentleman for 70 years. And she's not going to wake up with him tomorrow. She's asking you how she's going to do that.
Yeah.
So we come backstage and we talked about stuff like that, and which would have never been done 20 years ago. And,
Right.
it's come so far that Oklahoma City started a rookie class at the 1st of February, and part of the rookie academy was me and 2 other guys that have gone through PTSD going to talk to the rookies about it. So,
Perfect. That's excellent.
Yeah, that was, like I say, that was something that wouldn't even been, dreamt of 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And so now it's they're making it part of the curriculum of rookie school.
Awesome.
And it's not to scare people and say this is going to happen to you. This,
Right.
you are going to have PTSD. But we're just letting them know that, hey, you're in this job. The guys that are going to last on this job do 20, 25 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
It's because you have a heart for it. Well, if you have a heart for it, then calls are going to affect you emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely.
We always tell guys, because you get jabbed at the fire station, hang your feelings on the hook when you get your bunker coat in the morning. What we always tell new boys, because you're going to get picked on. So hang your feelings on the hook, but you can't hang your emotions on the hook. So
That's right.
you're going to have calls that bother you, and it's okay. You're human.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys come into this service thinking they're in this business or they're superhuman. Well, you do superhuman things, but you also see things that a lot of humans will never see and shouldn't have to see. So you just have to be ready for it.
Chris, if people want to reach out to you, contact you, hopefully bring you somewhere to talk to any kind of groups or anything like that, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on Twitter at it's at FF4OU.
Yep.
So and then and it's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually I'm getting with a guy. I'm trying to build me a little website.
Perfect.
Because that's what I want to do. I'm actually selling fire equipment for a company right now, but
perfect.
I'd love to put that aside and travel the country and speak and teach to what level I can teach, helping people. And I am kind of working with a couple of people. I don't know if I can say their name or not, but
yeah, it's up to you, brother. You can say whatever you want.
But it's an organization called safecallnow.org.
Okay.
And a guy named Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, safecallnow.org.
Okay.
Outstanding organization, and a guy named Jay Dobbins. He's a former ATF guy.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of been talking to them, and that's what they do. They of course, they've been doing it. They've been doing it for years, and that's just where I want to head to. I think I'm now seeing, now that, like I say, it's 20-something years later, and I can go back to my mom and say, maybe you were right. Maybe there was a reason it was me, and maybe that's it. Maybe to keep people from, and it sounds so cliche, if you can keep one person from, experiencing it, if that one person keeps one person, it's just kind of get a snowball effect. So that's what I'm looking to do. So that's why when you contacted me and I followed you on Twitter and we got together, I was really excited about coming on here.
Oh, Chris, I can think of no better person to go out and do the things that you want to do. I mean, for first responders in general, but specifically for the fire service, which I think the fire service is the one service that's lagging behind in all of this.
Oh, my gosh.
They're sort of the last ones to come, because I think it's just such a huge stigma, and no one wants to say, think that it might be weak, quote unquote.
Right.
And, if the fire service is really one of the slowest ones to let go of this and to move forward.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Sean. I've noticed that when I look on Twitter and I look on LinkedIn and all these places, and I see all these organizations for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not blaming law enforcement. They're doing the right thing. There's all these different organizations that are strictly for law enforcement, for suicide prevention, for PTSD, and you look and there's, and of course, I'm not smart enough to know how to start any of that kind of stuff, but there's not many out there just strictly for, and these law enforcement, they welcome in firefighters and first responders.
Yeah.
But their main focus and their background is law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I don't see very many with the background and their focus being firefighters.
You're right. EMS. You're right.
So.
Yeah, for sure. We need to change that. I'm sure you're going to be a part of that, Chris.
Well, I would love, me and you both, we need to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So, Chris, if there's someone listening right now who may be struggling on any level, if they were in front of you, what would you say to them?
First thing I would tell them is if they will reach out just they'll be shocked at how many people are reaching back to help them. It floored me because I was still nervous about admitting, but it's just crazy the amount of support and help, and especially if you love the job you're doing. Yeah, that's what I would tell them. If you love the job you're doing and you don't want this to change that, then you need to reach out and get help. I'm a perfect example. I was getting ready to quit the fire service after about 24 years. And because of reaching out and getting the help I needed, I was able to do another, 7 years. And,
wow.
And so I would just tell them just to reach out. I don't know, I'd probably just beg them,
yeah.
Because it's a first step. It seems like a hard step, but then once you get to where I'm at now,
right,
I look back and think, what a simple step it really was, and all the support that's out there. That's why, like me and you both said, we need to make more of a presence of firefighter groups out there to help people that are dealing with it.
Yeah, well said, Chris. Brother, this has been awesome. It's a real pleasure talking to you. I want to thank you for speaking about this issue. It's we need more people like you. It's an honor talking to you and hearing your story. And I know it's going to be, you're probably going to tell the story many, many more times now. And I hope that is the truth. But thank you, sir, for taking the time and for talking to us today.
Oh, you bet. It's been an honor, and thank you for what you do for this podcast. That for the people you have on here. That like I say, it's people like you that have to have these programs going, getting the word out. So I appreciate your work also.
We all have a part to play.
Yes, sir. I agree.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris. Listen, take care of yourself and your family. And if there's anything we can ever do or I can ever do, just please reach out. But we'll stay in touch. But again,
yes,
thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well, sir.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Now my shift is finally over. I gotta deal with what's mine.
Man, that was good. I really enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. Just recently, a couple days ago, I received an email from Chris, just giving an update for us. I'll read it. He says that he's now working with Sean Riley and Jay Dobbins and doing some speaking on his own. You can read about the training at www.armorupnow.org. That's ARMORUPNOW.org. And just go into the training section. Sean presents a talk called Armor Up. Jay presents Catching Hell. And Chris does First In. 3 real stories about guys who reached out for help when they needed it. So check that out. Chris is also working with a few speakers bureaus, trying to become part of their teams. That'll be great. He has a Facebook page called First In, so check that out. And he wants to thank you guys all for listening, for taking the time. Also, he wanted to reiterate that you can reach him at CL Fields, so that's CLFIELDS 64 at att.net. And he's also on Twitter at FF4OU. He was so great. Thanks, Chris, for taking the time. I loved talking to you. Okay, let's talk about an event that's coming up. A few events, but in the same place. So, if you are going to be in the St. John's area, the beginning of June, we now have something you can go do. On June 7th, that's a Thursday, there's going to be a showing of The Other Side of the Hero documentary. If you haven't seen it, get out and see it. That's going to be at Memorial University. And then Friday, the 8th, is an all-day education day with the Temacont Memorial Trust. Go to tema.ca, and I'm sure you'll find everything to do with that. If you'd like to register or take part in that, it'll be awesome. I'm sure some of the ambassadors are going to be there. Jamie McWhorter is going to be there for sure, our Newfoundland ambassador. If you haven't met him yet, He's a riot. Love him. Then, on the 9th, Jamie is heading out on a 2-week tour all around Newfoundland. He's going to be stopping at police departments, fire halls, shelters, wherever he can find people with PTSD. Plus, there's going to be meetings of the PTSD buddies. He'll be making videos with people he chats with, driving between locations. It's going to be a road tour. It's going to be awesome. I know it's in partnership with Tema and also with Spartan Wellness. They're going to be going to 10 different Royal Canadian Legions across the island. They'll be hosting PTSD and marijuana education nights with a free barbecue. You can't beat free food, people. Here's the schedule. June 10th, Conception Bay South. June 11th, Bay Roberts. June 12th, Carbonear. June 13th, Clarenville. June 14th, Catalina. The 15th in Gander. The 18th in Corner Brook. The 20th in Stephenville. The 22nd in Deer Lake. And the 23rd in Port aux Basques. That's going to be awesome. If you can catch any of that, please check it out. All right. Thanks, everybody, for continuing to support this podcast. Thanks to everyone who continuously shares and leaves comments and feedback. Please do that. It means a lot to me. I love doing this podcast. This is my way of doing what I can for this movement. It does take a lot out of me to do it. I will tell you that. It takes a lot of time and a lot of emotional currency, if I can say it that way, if that makes sense. I'm exhausted after each chat. Brings up a lot of stuff for me, and I need a little bit of downtime in between. But I love doing it because I think it helps people, and it does help me to continuously talk to people about this subject. If you like it, please share it. Do whatever you're comfortable doing. Share it. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Google Play Music, or really on any other app that you would use to listen to podcasts. You should be able to search Tema Talks and it should come up. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll fix it right away. We still have our Facebook page contest running. We're almost at 800 now. We're trying to get to 1,000. When we get to 1,000, we're going to have a draw for 5 Tema swag bags. It's going to be good. So that's continuing to go well. So if you can share the page, if you're already following it, just share it to let people know. If you think it may be something that they may find helpful, that would be great. All right, so you're going to hear from me again in a few days. So until then, more love, less judgment.
'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.